Hey there, welcome to Educate. My name is Vasudha Chopra, and for the purpose of today's lesson, I'm going to take you through the most fascinating topic in psychology themed as intelligence. So, have you ever wondered why one person is more intelligent than another person? Right? Also, have you ever been named or have you ever been called Mr. Smarty Pants or Brainiac or a nerd ever before? Do these terms sound familiar to you? But in real, defining intelligence is a lot more trickier than just calling people smart. So, what is intelligence? Is intelligence about the general skills and abilities? Or is it about being creative and very innovative? Does intelligence have anything to do with the genetics or with the nurturing that you receive? Today's lesson will explore just that. Interestingly, there have been very many intelligence tests which help you to identify more intelligent individuals than less intelligent individuals. But their history is pretty dark. By that, we mean literally dating it back to the Nazis' time. However, let's roll and let's unravel intelligence together. As we look at today's lesson, the chapter is named as Variations in Psychological Attributes. So, do we notice that all of us, we vary drastically in the way we present ourselves to the world, right? You and your best friend might be two individuals who think absolutely alike. However, there might be some ways in which you both differ from each other. Right? These differences account for something known as individual differences. It's these differences that allow us to experience our worlds differently from each other. Let's explore some key terms which will help you to understand the rest of the chapter as we go. So let's look at some of the key terms. If you can just go through some of the key terms listed here. Just breeze through some of these key terms. All right. We have a bit of a think tank. So I love to do this thing known as think tank, wherein I'll pause you to think about some topics, some ideas, which will help you to gather more intel about from your own life about what we're talking about, right? And it'll help you to apply. So here's your think tank, guys. The first think tank is, how are we different from each other? In real life, are we really different from even the one person who is so much like us? Right? If yes, how is it that we're different? The next thing that I'd want you to think about is, what is it that sets you and this person you're so alike with apart? Last off, how is it that two best friends who are so similar, they experience very, very different realities? So can we take a couple of minutes to please think about this? Now that you're done thinking about it, we can understand the concept of individual differences. So, of course, two best friends who are so alike in their preferences, in their likes, in their interests, yet experience very different realities. You know, we can account for those realities to this thing called as personal traits. Can I say that all of us are born with traits which are very unique to us? And of course, these traits, they emit behaviors, right? These behaviors are those actions which we act upon based out of our own individual thoughts, right? And of course, all of this is wrapped in this external or internal little context which creates itself as the situations. Sometimes these situations are external, sometimes these circumstances and situations are internal. But this is the reason why all of us are different from each other. So if you can look at the image to your right, it has a different variety of children with different emotions on their faces. If you observe them carefully, you will notice that there's one, the first one, he looks to be furious. The other child seems to be cringing. The one at the third place seems to be, contemplating someone. So it goes so forth. As you look at these variety of emotions, do we experience these emotions from time to time? Sometimes this could be internally felt due to whatever is going on within us. Other times it can be experienced based out of whatever we're feeling on the outside, right? Whatever feelings come to us from the circumstances on the outside. So the distinctiveness in how we feel, how we behave, how we act, comes because of the behavior patterns that we emit, and they also come because of the person's characteristic. Now, if there's one individual who is very calm and sober, and he tends to be put up in an environment which is very aggressive, what do you think would happen to him? Would he be forced to be a little aggressive from time to time, or maybe after a lapse of time? That's the distinctiveness which causes us to be different from each other. Another concept that you and I will explore together is called as situationism. Do our circumstances shape who we are? Is it true that whatever circumstances are headed our way, maybe positive or negative, they tend to let us be a particular way? Right? So these situations can be again caused internally, they could be caused externally, but they do somehow are a recipe to the way we behave in that particular day. So human behavior is a result, guys, of both internal and external factors. All of the situations which we experience in our everyday, those circumstances, they all are placed in a way that they influence us. Right? Which is why at the beginning of the day, how you feel is literally how your day plays out. Okay? If you're feeling very happy and chirpy in the beginning of the day, it's most likely to happen that most of your day will go happy and chirpy, if you've noticed. However, if you do get grumpy or grizzly through the day, you will notice that more of the grumps and grizzles find you. Right? So the situation actually gets you to be influenced by it, and it tends to have a hold on you. This is what is called as situationism. An interesting example is listed here. So for example, if there's a person who is absolutely aggressive, but in front of an authority figure, he may act in a very submissive manner, right? Because he knows that his aggressiveness will not be acceptable. So that is situationism here. Our third keyword to understand this chapter better is assessment. Do we like assessments? I'm sure most of us don't. However, assessment, guys, is of two types. There is a formal assessment, there is an informal assessment. Why we're talking about assessment is because intelligence needs to be assessed. To be able to find out about being more intelligent or less intelligent, assessment is a very handy tool. So of course, when it comes to being formally assessed, any kind of formal assessment is something that is structured, it's very objective, it's standardized. On the contrary, something that is very informal is something that's open to subjectivity and may be different for different individuals, right? Okay, so whenever we do any kind of assessment in psychology to assess its various attributes, we do measure all kinds of abilities, we measure all kinds of behaviors and personal qualities. These are absolutely beautifully scored through real validity and reliability of tests, right? Which ask you very interesting questions based on these three aspects, and the scores of which then are able to predict that attribute of psychology which you're trying to measure. So very interestingly, psychological tests, they measure personalities, they measure behaviors, they measure your anxiety level, they measure your adjustment, they measure about your sexuality. They also measure very beautifully all about your intelligence. Okay, I hope you're with me. If there are questions, please post and we'll get back to you in the comments section in case if you have additional questions. The next interesting thing that we need to understand before we really get into the chapter is a little bit about these psychological attributes. Okay, so when I talk about these attributes, please note that these attributes are not linear. That means you're not always becoming more intelligent as you grow with age or experience. It can happen that you become less intelligent too, right? Interestingly, intelligence is not very complicated as most of you may think it to be, but it is quite complex. Okay, and the other interesting domain here is the fact that intelligence is multi-dimensional. Okay, when I say multi-dimensional, it essentially means that there are some parts of your intelligence which might become more as you grow. However, there might be some other parts which might become less interesting, or perhaps it's only because of your focused interest that they may become a little weaker in their abilities. For example, it is commonly said that old people, they somehow become more intelligent with age. However, physically their condition might deteriorate as they grow older, which is what is meant by it being multidimensional. Okay, so some aspects of your abstract thinking might enhance as you grow older. However, some aspects of, let's say, your logical thinking might, they might become a little weaker as you grow older in age. Okay, all of these psychological assessments, they are categorized in a variety of ways. There are several ways in which these are, tested, and it'll be interesting to explore it as we go. All right, I guess it's time to explore some definitions. We've been talking so much about one person being more intelligent than the other, but what Okay, so we've been talking so much about one individual being more intelligent than another, but how do we know for sure? And so way before, and listen to this as a story now, way before there were a lot of individuals who debated about how an individual is more intelligent than another. What is it that makes people smarter? So, based out of these arguments and discussions, there were a lot of individuals who came with some important definitions about intelligence. Now, these definitions were not it all. They were not very watertight, but they came with other certain keywords which were necessary to understand the concept of intelligence. So we'll look at these definitions, and furthermore, we'll also understand some of these other attributes that we've been talking about in psychology. Okay, let's look at these together. And if you get confused, please pause. Please read the definition very carefully. It's essential that you underline these keywords in your textbook as I teach you about it, right? Reproducing the same essential keywords for your board exam will be very helpful to you to earn those marks you're rooting for. Let's go. So the very first definition that you get to see of psychology is about psychology being the global capacity of an individual to understand the world, to think very rationally, to use resources very effectively whenever we are faced with a challenge. So what do you guys think? Do you agree? Is intelligence that global capacity that is helping you to solve so many problems in such a meaningful way? Right? Think about this, because what it really does, guys, is that it becomes a global measure for you to look at anyone and tell whether if they're utilizing all of those cognitive competencies that they have, and are they really profiting from whatever they've used so far from their life and from school. Okay, so intelligence, to sum it all, is basically that holistic, that very wholesome ability of yours which you have generated from years and years of your training at school, as well as experiences which you've got from the people around you, right? And you've taken all of that, and then you're utilizing it to solve problems very effectively as and when you're faced with any challenge. Does that sound wholesome and interesting? Great. Please make sure to underline all of these keywords very, very carefully in your notebook, because you're going to have to write it exactly the same way for your board exam. So the next keyword we'll look at is aptitude. So what is aptitude? Do you guys remember taking a test when you were coming from grade 10 to grade 11, which helped determine whether if you should choose science as your mainstream or you should pick on maybe commerce or humanities? If you took that test was basically mapping your underlying potential. So all of us are born with some potentials. It's the way our brains are hardwired, or the genetics, would I say, passed out to you. Aptitude predominantly determines whether if you're going to be great at something you wish to choose. Right? These tests are very carefully developed and built, and they help you to determine what is it that would help you prosper at the thing that you're choosing to do, or for acquiring a particular skill. Right? So for example, a person who is very high on mechanical aptitude can be trained to become a successful engineer. However, somebody who doesn't own that mechanical aptitude might not be able to acquire those skills very efficiently or effectively. That is aptitude, my friends. The next interesting psychological attribute that we look at is interest. Okay, so interest, what do you know about interest? What can we say about interest? Can I say that interest is just about your preference? When I choose pink over blue, or when I choose strawberries over mango, or when I choose dolphins over horses, or when I choose a beach over a mountain, is that my set of preference? That preference is understood as my interest. It is my interest of engaging in a particular activity, event, or a situation or a circumstance over another or relative to another, right? That is what defines interest for us. Great. I think that we've done a couple of keywords, and we'll pause here to understand your learning. There's this little thing that I love to do with you guys in my videos, which is that I have to know whether if you've been listening on very carefully. So I would like you to pause, and I have a question for you which will flash on my screen. I need you to test your learning. Pull out a paper and notebook, or a notebook or a pencil, and kindly look out for the answer. Either if you know the answer, write it out. If you don't, I'd be happy if you'd like to just maybe look it up, right? Or maybe go back in the video and check on the answer. Let's do it now. It's going to be helpful for you to learn this better. So here's me flashing at you your question. What is aptitude? Can we please take a minute to define aptitude? Write the answer down. It's time to look at the next definition. And exploring this together will be interesting because it's all about your personality. So, what is an individual's personality? Have you ever wondered? Have you use the word so often, but do you know what it truly really means? So, what is personality and what comes to your mind? Take a minute to think about this. Personality is defined as a relatively enduring characteristic of a specific person that makes him very distinct from the others. Right? For example, I as an individual am very outgoing, but there are moments where I can feel quite withdrawn. So it is the capacity of me to feel the way I do based out of the circumstance or the situation that I'm planted in. Right? That is personality. You can also identify some core traits of yours which identify you to be who you truly are. You can take a minute to do this now. Up next, we've got values. So all of us, we're born, we're raised, especially being in a collectivist country like India and within the Asian continent, we're all born with these values, right? They're all endorsed into us. They're literally infused into us by our own parents. So are there some values that each of us own which are very dear to us? I would love for you to take a minute to think about, or maybe write List out 2 values, which is something that you stand by. Once you're done listing it out, values, and if you look at it very carefully, you'll realize that values are those enduring beliefs about your ideal mode of behavior. You know how the society is always talking to you about the right way to behave, or the right way to be, or the right way to express yourself, or choosing the right time to speak. So some of these ideas include a lot of the right things to do, right? But these enduring beliefs, they are those, they do, of course, they have a component of morality into it, wherein there is this super consciousness, there is this belief about being absolutely conscientious. You always want to be doing things which kind of put you looking good in other people's eyes. So you want to display that to others. However, values is more than just that. Values are those very core beliefs which you specifically stand by. They are enduring because they're very lasting, and it is ideal for you before others, right? It could be ideal mode of behavior for others, but mostly, guys, if you hold on to values which are true to you, which make you feel good, will be greater in the long run. However, this is the definition which we all must follow. Okay, so please make sure again that you underline these important parts of the definition herewith. Great, how are we doing? This is the time for another Quizlet, right? I guess we've been studying a little bit, and I hope it's not been too very heavy for all of you. So let's take a bit of a pause here and let's just check out, let's just do a little Quizlet together. Like the older time, I'm going to flash the question on the screen for you, and you have to take a moment to answer the question. Ready, set, go. So from the definition that we've looked at of intelligence, I would love for you to write it down on a piece of paper and test your learning. So far, of whatever you've understood about intelligence, I'm sure you're wondering about the definition of intelligence. Like we said in the beginning of the chapter, it's not absolutely easy to put a finger on what is it that makes one individual smarter than the other. So debating on the same topic, a lot of research analysts, a lot of theorists, a lot of individuals who were academicians, they kind of discussed and they talked about the true meaning of intelligence. To better understand what intelligence was truly about, several theorists, they came from far and wide to talk about their holistic definitions. What these definitions are, let's look at it together and explore. Let's look at the various definitions of intelligence together. The very first one that we'll look at today was given by the Oxford Dictionary. Now, guys, it's absolutely crucial that you underline these important definitions, these key words from the definition, and because they'll be very helpful for not just recall, but also for earning those marks you're looking for. So the very first given by Oxford Dictionary suggests that intelligence is about perceiving, learning, knowing, and understanding. Okay, up next, there is an interesting first theorist of intelligence theories, Alfred Binet, who spoke about intelligence being the ability to judge well, reason well, and understand well. Are we often judging people? Are we trying to tell them from being the good one or the bad one? Or probably judging their actions? Don't we judge everybody in every way during all times of the day? So that is our ability to be able to judge, and whether if our judgment is good, it's bad, is what is your ability to be less intelligent or more intelligent. Of course, that follows true with reasoning well. When you judge someone, I'm sure you have a valid reason for why you judge them the way you do. That reasoning itself qualifies for a great quality of intelligence. And yes, of course, our ability to understand others, it helps us not only to lift us up through the emotions that we experience or the circumstances we are placed in, but understanding others also helps you to get a greater picture of why things are the way they are and gets you to be a little easy about it, right? So this was Alfred Binet's definition of intelligence. Let's go ahead. So let's look at the definition given by Wechsler. According to Wechsler, intelligence is all about the global and aggregate capacity of the individual to think rationally, act very purposefully, and deal very effectively with the world around them. So yes, thinking rationally is a very important factor when you think about intelligence, right? You've got to think logically, you got to think well and swell. You got to also act purposefully. So sometimes most of our actions can land us in trouble and we cringe upon why we behave the way we behave. So intelligent individuals usually they act very purposefully. And yes, of course, they have the knack of dealing very effectively, very, very fluently and crisply with whatever it is that they need to tend with. Okay, so that is the definition given by Wechsler. Again, please underline these keywords very, very carefully and learn them exactly as they are. Up next, we've got Gardner and Sternberg. So these two individuals interestingly said that intelligence is not only about adapting to the environment, but it is also actively shaping and modifying the environment in which you exist. Let's say that you put in an environment that does not feel very good to you. Would you stay there and be surviving in that environment happily? No, right? So you always have that choice. You have that ability to get up and shape that environment and modify it a little bit so that it can feel more meaningful and it can be futile for you to grow effectively as well. So these were the 4 definitions, guys, which we were going to look at for intelligence. I want you to choose and cherry pick your personal favorite, and you can always put it in the comments below for us to look at. However, choosing your personal favorite definition will also tell me a lot about your intelligence. So choose on, and we'll go on to the next part of the chapter. All right. So since we've been talking so much about intelligence, I think it's that time of the hour to look and deep dive into several theories of intelligence. So, just like you're wondering what intelligence is truly about, and I'm sure you've had a discussion with your friends by now about what is intelligence and hey, why is it that you're more intelligent and I'm less intelligent, right? So, guys, is intelligence really about that general ability, those skills? Is it about any specific, skill set, talents, or abilities? Or is it truly about just creativity and innovation? So, what is it? Or is it also just about the genetics? Or is it something to do with, the environment in which you brought up? So there are so many questions that are buzzing in my own mind, and I'm sure they're buzzing in yours too. So just like you and me, way back in the hood, there were these theorists who came together to really understand and define what is it that makes people intelligent. So from these conversations, there are 2 types of theorists that got categorized. One kind of theorists came to be known as the kind of theorists who into psychometrics, and the other type that were more to do with information processing theorists. Okay, so what these 2 really mean is what we'll deep dive into. We'll start with the information processors, the ones who came forward to process these theories of intelligence for us, and we'll go ahead to understand the psychometricians as well of intelligence. Let's unravel it together. Let's begin the next segment of the chapter about the theories. As already shared with you, there are these 2 types of theorists who came forward. There was one category of theorists which were all about metrics in intelligence, which spoke about that there are certain specific abilities that make one person more intelligent than the other. However, the second type of theorists are more interesting, and they said that being intelligent has nothing to do with a specific set of abilities, not to do with how many intelligences you own, but it is instead to do with how one individual chooses to process the information. Therefore, they were called as psychometric and information processing approaches two intelligence theories. So the psychometric approach, they said that intelligence is an aggregate of abilities. That means that intelligence is to do with certain number specific set of abilities that you might own. On the contrary, information processors said that it is not to do with the number of intelligences that we own. However, it is to do with the process we choose to solve problems or to overcome with challenges that we experience in our daily life. Right? Psychometric approach, however, focused on the structure of intelligence and what did the structure very technically look like. On the contrary, information processors, they focus more on how is it that the intelligent person is interacting. They will focus so much more on how they're choosing to deal with things rather than just looking at the structural, technical, mechanical aspect of it. Last off, psychometric theorists, they focused and they said that individual performance was a single index of your cognitive abilities. That means that cognitively, anything to do with cognition, guys, is to do with your mind. Right? It is to do with the mental framework. It is to do with your mental processes. So how is it that cognitively you own the ability to kind of deal with whatever it is that you need to deal with? So they measured your intelligence based upon that ability of yours, which was very cognitive in its nature. On the contrary, information processors, they focus more on what are the functions of an individual, right, who is using the cognitive competence. What are those underlying behaviors that they exhibit, that display, one individual being more intelligent than the other? And that's what information processing theorists mentioned. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at each of these theories one by one. We're going to go through the psychometric approach first, and then we're going to go through the information processing approach. Okay, so the very first psychometric theorist who came about to define intelligence was Alfred Binet. He was very inspired by individuals and he kind of observed people, more and more individuals from being, he kind of observed people from being the ones who were more intelligent from less intelligent persons. And while he kind of observed these individuals, he noticed that there was this one factor which was common amidst all the people who were said to be intelligent. What was that one factor? Alfred Binet called it the uni-factor or the one-factor theory. And the one factor, guys, was all about your ability to solve problems. If you solved your problems effectively, you were considered to be intelligent back in the hood from those individuals who were unable to solve their problems. Right? So he is the first one who has formalized the concept of intelligence in terms of mental operations. So all of these mental operations are basically everything that we do with our mind in terms of thinking, decision making, rationalizing, perceiving, judging, right? All of those things which we're doing with the mind are termed as mental operations, and he was the first one to conceptualize them. After having conceptualized this, he settled with his theory of individuals being able to solve problems effectively to be that one unique factor that called individuals to be intelligent. Okay? So it's quizzy time. I'm just going to look at how much were you paying attention to what I was saying. Can we please now take a moment to identify the theory given by Alfred Binet? Let's see how many of you got it right. It's time to look at the second theory, which is given by Charles Spearman. If you can see, I've put a little picture on the side for you to for you to look at how he looks like. Charles Spearman was another interesting intelligence theorist. He was a psychometric theorist. I've mentioned, by the way, there is this one little placard on the side which mentions what theory. So if you can see on the right in purple, you'll see that this is a psychometric theory. It's given by Charles Spearman, and it talks about a two-factor theory. Remember how Alfred Binet speaks about a one-factor theory? In the two-factor theory, Charles Spearman said that, hey, intelligence is not just about this one factor. If it's not just about individuals having that one problem-solving ability. However, it is about two factors, and these two factors were found out through a statistical method. right? In this statistical method, they found out that all of us individuals who are intelligent are said to have a general factor G and a specific factor S. So the general factor G, it consists of mental operations which are common to all performers, right? For example, a general factor could mean that all of you are in 12th grade and you have the ability to read and write, correct? So can I say that that is your general factor? On the contrary, a specific factor is your specific ability. For example, Vasudha ma'am is great at horse riding. You maybe, on the contrary, could be great at baking or stitching, or you could be great at playing the piano, or you could be a great Zumba instructor, right? So that is your specific factor. Specific factors are specific abilities to excel at a particular skill or domain. So now that we've understood Charles Spearman theory, are we clear about what is the general factor and the specific factor? They're all about those general and specific skills which we own at the age we're at currently. Okay? We're going to now move on to the next theory of intelligence. This next theory is given by Louis Thurstone. Louis Thurstone, and again I've placed a picture of Louis Thurstone. He's a very interesting psychometric intelligence theorist who spoke about intelligence not just being about a general factor or a specific factor or a uni-factor, unlike the first two therapists. However, intelligence is all about those 7 primary mental abilities. Isn't that so fascinating to know? 7 primary mental abilities, if you own them, you were considered to be intelligent back in the hood. Now, what are these primary abilities? Let's just look at them first. The first one is verbal comprehension. There is numerical reasoning. There is spatial relations, perceptual speed, word fluency, memory, and inductive reasoning. If you had all 7 of these abilities, you were said to be an intelligent individual, right? In case if you didn't own even one of these, you were regarded as an individual who was not intelligent. So an important disclaimer according to Louis Thurstone here was that each of these abilities are very independent of each other. Okay, it's not necessary that you need to it's not important that your spatial relations will depend on your numerical ability or your numerical ability will depend on your memory. Each of them, they exist very independently. Okay, let's just seek to understand each of these one by one. So verbal comprehension is your ability to read and write effectively. Your ability to read words and tell them apart from each other is your verbal comprehension. Of course, you have numerical ability. Numerical abilities are those mathematical skills. If you're able to, add 754 plus 672, your numerical abilities are great. Let's not talk about mine. Okay. Up next, you have spatial relations, individuals who are very good with keeping a good distance between objects rather than bumping into them, such as pilots or drivers, are individuals who have great spatial relations. They understand space very well, especially while driving or while flying a helicopter or so, or even when you walk, you don't bump into another individual, right? You know what is a healthy distance to pause before you run into another individual. That are spatial relations. You have perceptual speed, which is to understand with measuring your speed, which is, for example, when you are in a train and you're going one way, perceptually you know that you're headed maybe in the right direction and not in the opposite direction. That is your ability to process and tell speed, right? Word fluency is your ability to speak very effectively without losing choice of words, right? When you have enough words to convey and express meaningfully what you're wanting to express. And yes, of course, memory is your ability to not just store information but recall it for use whenever you need to use it. And then there is inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is your ability to add on to information as you talk about it, to build upon information meaningfully as you interact with another individual. So according to Louis Thurstone, guys, if you had all of these abilities, you were said to be an intelligent individual. So Here we have Arthur Jensen. If you can see him on to the right of your screen, you will see him in black and white. Arthur Jensen is another theorist who is talking about the psychometric theories of intelligence, and he speaks about intelligence being associated with two levels. These levels are level 1 and level 2. So what are these levels? Let's look at them. You can see how there is a level 1 and level 2, which is why it's called a psychometric theory. So to understand the psychometric theory, it's very easy. Think of when you were a little child and you learned how to brush your teeth. Can I say that first at level 1, you kind of associated with how is it that your teeth are brushed. So you probably picked up the brush. You probably actually saw somebody brushing their teeth on TV. And you probably, or your mother kind of role modeled of how to pick up the brush and how to put toothpaste on it and put it to your teeth and then actually brush your teeth. That was level 1, wherein you associated that learning of brushing your teeth in your mind's eye. You first just very visually actually saw it being done. And you kind of replayed that, and you associated with holding of the brush, you associated with putting a pea-sized paste on your brush, and then of course brushing your teeth. So all of that was associative learning. Here the input and output are merely the same. On the contrary, at level 2 is when you actually show that competence cognitively of holding the brush, of putting your toothpaste onto it, and then actually brushing your teeth. Right? So there is all that higher order thinking which is involved, wherein you just go with the brush and you kind of brush your teeth. Right? Here there is transformation happening, and of course the input to produce has a very effective output. Okay, so that is level 2. So that's level 1 and level 2 of Arthur Jensen's psychometric theory. Last off for today's lesson, we have got J.P. Guilford's structure of intellect model. So this structure of intellect model is almost like a Rubik's Cube. Have you guys seen that Rubik's Cube? It's got so many sides, but this one by J.P. Guilford has got 3 sides only. It talks about what is it that we do to produce an output. Right? And it's a psychometric approach because again it has these 3 metrics of operations, contents and products. He says that if we use these operations, contents and products very effectively, we are said to be intelligent individuals. According to him, there is a structure of intellect which comprises of these 3 domains of operations, contents and products. They're divided into 180 cells, and each of them has at least one factor or ability being represented on it. Okay, so each factor has all of these 3 dimensions, all of the 3 domains, and here's what it looks like. So it's got operations, which means things like cognition, memory, recording, divergent thinking, convergent thinking. It has contents such as visual, auditory, symbolic, semantic, behavioral, and it has products like units, classes, systems, formations, implications. So let's just take an example because it seems complicated, doesn't it? So let's take the example of you sitting in your psychology class. So when you sit in your psychology class, can I say that you have some operands upon which you're operating, such as you have, you listening intently to me, you have these notebooks, you have this book, you have your cognition and you have your thinking. Can I say that all of these are operators? You're operating upon them to focus on what I'm saying. Then of course you have some contents. These contents could be the PPT that you're looking at. It could be the blackboard or the whiteboard. It could be the chalk. It could be the notebook and pen with which you're using. It could be you using your eyes to even look at me. It's you visually looking at whatever it is and auditorily even hearing whatever it is that I'm talking about. So those are the contents which you're using, right, to focus on what I'm saying. And then products, of course. Please excuse me for missing out on the R in my products. But the products, of course, are when you actually sit to do a unit test in psychology. Are you able to write it out effectively? Do you, kind of lay out your unit test in a meaningful way that can help you earn marks? Yes? If that's a yes, that means your products are effectively produced from whatever input you induced. And that talks about J.P. Guilford's structure of intellect model. Thank you guys. These were the 5 psychometric theories. In our next session together, we're going to look at the next set of theories, which are information processing theories. I understand this has been a little technical, but just hold on. Theories tend to be a little dry or a drag. Don't worry, we're going to come back, revise these theories in our next clips, right? However, for now, thank you for your patience and your focus and for keeping up with everything I taught. I will test you on your learning in my next video, so watch out for that. For now, thank you and bye-bye.